we're afraid of making the wrong decision, which is decision paralysis that I'm going to get into.
This is one of my absolute favorite topics because it's so wide reaching. It applies to so many different things in your personal life, as a coach, your skill set, building a business, and it's about being decisive. Most people are not decisive. They don't make bold decisions. You know, we call it analysis paralysis. And if you can't make bold decisions, you won't be a good coach, which means your clients won't get the results they could otherwise get because they won't follow your leadership. But you cannot build a business without being a bold decision maker. And see, here's the thing. If you don't make bold decisions and you're not implementing the information, then the information doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you know how to market or you know sales techniques or any of the other tactics. Your lack of decision making will sabotage all of it.
Let me know the area of your life that you have a big decision to make. You don't have to explain the decision if you don't want to. If you want to, absolutely tell me what the decision is. But I at least want to know, what area of your life do you have a big decision to make? And I want you to really think about that decision. Even if you don't share on the comments here what big decision you have to make, I want you to have this in your mind. And the reason is, if you don't have a decision in your mind that you can filter everything I'm about to say through, then everything that I'm about to say could end up just being theory. And I don't want it to be theory for you. I want it to be real. I want it to be something that you can listen to and go, oh, this is how it applies to my decision. And one of the things that cause people to stay stuck is because they're not actually in their learning. Because they're not looking at the learning through a certain lens, as I'm explaining to you, or they don't take any action on the learning. And so there isn't any leverage created because nothing is acted upon. And if something isn't acted upon, then your knowledge is useless, right? Knowledge without implementation is ignorance. What's actually the point of having knowledge that we don't implement? Nobody's ever knowledged their way to their goals and dreams. You can only implement your way there. You can only action your way to your goals and dreams. But one of the reasons why we don't implement is what we'll talk about here. It's decisions. But not only is unimplemented knowledge ignorance, it actually hurts the likelihood for taking action. This is a relatively new thought of mine, maybe in the last year and a half or so, and it's just so profound when you understand we don't have a knowledge problem. None of us have a knowledge problem. None of us have a knowledge deficit. If you do have a knowledge deficit, you personally, that gets solved incredibly fast nowadays. What we have is an implementation deficit. What we have are commitment problems. And pretty much all of those is because we're afraid of making the wrong decision, which is decision paralysis that I'm going to get into. But if you have knowledge that you're not implementing, the worst thing you can do is just pack more knowledge on. But the intellect understands, the intellect really is driven by knowledge. So if you don't have what you want in your life, the intellect, which is essentially a computer driven by knowledge, thinks you got a knowledge problem. And if your computer thinks you have a knowledge problem, well then the solution clearly is, I need more knowledge. But it's not the collection or the existence of knowledge that's the problem. It's that the knowledge is staying inside the head instead of being implemented into reality of some kind. Let's get into decision paralysis. Again, one of the main reasons that we don't implement our knowledge is because we don't want to make the wrong decision. Here's another question for you. I want you to think of that same decision that you're thinking of right now, right? If you're just joining me now, I'm asking everybody to think of a decision, a big decision that you need to make in your life, one way or the other. And I want you to tell me what area of your life that decision is. And then, if you haven't posted what area, then you can post that and what I'm about to say. For those of you that posted the area earlier, then just post what I'm about to say. I want you to tell me how long you've been sitting on that decision. So you might say, somebody said, spouse, my relationship with my spouse. However long that's been. If you've been sitting on that decision for 4 years, then you would type in marriage, comma, 4 years or something like that, right? So I want you to, and give me as much specificity as possible. So don't just say a long, long time. Don't just say months. Don't just say years. Be as specific as possible. I want you to say 5 years, 12 years, 3 months, whatever the time is. So here's the reality. This is the harsh reality. All of that time that you've been sitting in indecision, number one, you obviously haven't been benefiting from any of the progress that decision could have made. But number two, it's harder to make the decision now than when it was at the very beginning. The longer that we take to make a decision, the harder it is to decide, because we just spin our wheels. We just spin our wheels. And that's a function of the brain, that the brain is more wired to be safe than it is to be successful. The brain is more wired to keep you out of danger than it is to keep you in love, or to keep you in happiness, or to keep you in any positive emotion, joy. Your brain is not wired to keep you in joy. Your brain is wired to keep you alive. And in order to keep you alive, it must keep you from danger. So here's how the brain operates. And it's critical that we understand why we are paralyzed by decisions, so that we can recognize it when it's happening, and then obviously change the recipe. I always try to scientifically break it down. And the point is for control, right? You can't control something you don't understand. And so most people are trying to control a brain that they don't understand, or they're trying to control a spirit or a soul that they don't fully understand, or try to control sabotage they don't understand. We must understand in order to be able to control something. Now, if you don't understand how your brain works, you can manipulate it and manipulate your own behavior through willpower. But willpower is a very, very short-lived animal. And so most people are trying to gain control of their lives through motivational willpower. And that'll never work. It only works in a temporary fashion. But when you understand the process, now you'll be able to have control, and you won't have to willpower your way over the process. So decision paralysis causes us to not make choices. And not only do we not obviously get the outcome of those choices, but the longer we spin our wheels on it, the harder it is to make a choice, because the brain is afraid of danger. Now, here's why, we hear a lot of times, we hear that people are afraid of change. It's not so much that we're afraid of change, it's we're afraid of new danger. That's why the brain convinces us we're afraid of change. Think about this. If you're in an area right now where you actually have a corner, right? Like I have a corner in my office. There's a corner right there, right? And if I'm the brain, if I'm in charge of making sure that I never get hurt, I will convince myself to not risk what I don't know. And right there is a corner. Now, you might not be able to see from the angle, but that's a hallway right there. If there's a bad guy waiting for me right behind that corner, and I just go walking around it all carelessly, he could kill me, right? Now, I'm pretty sure there's nobody in my office waiting for me, but that's the way the brain operates. So you got to understand, if the brain's highest priority is to keep this body alive, then it needs to know what's around every corner. This is why we're so paralyzed. It needs to know what's around every corner, which is literally in all ways impossible. But that's why we do what we do and why we don't do what we don't do. It's not because we're afraid of making decisions. It's because we're afraid of the negative outcome of those decisions. So if you've been sitting on a fear of the negative outcome of a decision for 2 years, it's just easier to keep thinking about it for another year than it is to make a decision, because your brain's been contemplating all the negative stuff for 2 years. So the downside to this, if we really want to turn the heat up, is not only have you not gotten the positive decisions or the positive benefits from the decision, not only have you made it harder to make a decision, but because of the way the brain works, it catastrophizes the future so that it can be prepared for anything negative. You've actually been experiencing at a neurological level in your body, you've actually been experiencing the negative outcome of a decision you haven't made and the negative outcome of not making the decision. So if you're in a space right now where you're in a relationship, you're in a job, you're in a location, and you want to move, or whatever the current scenario is, there's probably some negative effect of the current scenario, which is why you're contemplating the decision, right? But your brain has convinced you that the potential danger of making the decision is worse than the current danger of staying here. I'm sure you've heard some version of, when the pain of remaining the same outweighs the pain of change, then you'll change. This is exactly what that quote is talking about. But the problem is, while your brain is saying, hey, this pain is actually better than that pain, you're experiencing both. So even if you had to choose between one or the other, my advice is choose one. Don't keep telling yourself that you're trying to figure out which one you're going to choose and in the process experiencing both of them. That's the way the brain prepares itself. So if we understand that this is all a function of protection, the brain doesn't keep us in decision paralysis because it doesn't like us. The brain doesn't do this because it actually enjoys the current situation or it enjoys the misery. The brain does this because it loves us so much, it wants to keep us alive. The way the brain operates is it sits at a decision point and it says, if I make this decision, what could possibly happen? If I make this decision, what could possibly happen? The brain is brilliant at the make-believe game. The brain is brilliant at the what-if game. That's why so many of us get trapped in the what-if question when we're focused on something potentially negative. What if I make the wrong choice? Again. What if I get into a bad relationship? Again. What if I invest money and I lose it? Again. So let's take that last one. What if I invest money and I lose it again? That's what the brain is thinking about. Now, the brain is thinking about that because it wants to know which path to take, right? Either invest here or invest there, or don't invest at all and invest here. And it's not only with money, but let's go ahead and use that example. So the brain is going, should I invest money or should I not invest money? I think I just flipped them, but you get the idea. Should I invest money or should I not invest money? If you've got a decision that you made in the past where you invested a bunch of money, or it doesn't even matter if it was a lot, but it was the wrong choice, then here's what your brain is saying. If I invest the money and I lose it again, what will happen? Because the brain's trying to look to see what's around the corner. So if it goes wrong, if the catastrophe happens, we catastrophize everything to try to protect ourselves. That's the way the brain operates. If the catastrophe happens, how will that feel? And then the brain loves the make-believe game. Oh, okay. So if I invest the money and it turns out to be the wrong choice again, then I will feel like I did back there. So then your brain literally re-experiences the negative emotions, especially if none of that stuff has been expressed or reconciled or healed. Then the brain literally pulls this back off the shelf and goes, oh, this is how I'll feel again. But then you get a little bit of judgment on top of that about probably being stupid and you should have known better. I thought you learned the lessons last time. How many times you always going to do this to us? I can't trust you with money. So then the brain goes in on ourselves going, oh, not only will I feel the negativity like we did the last time, but we're going to add a little bit more because you're screwing up again. And so literally the brain, by answering this question, is giving us the experience of the failure before we've made the decision. That's how the brain works when left on its own, when we don't get involved and say, no, there's other variables here, buddy, right? Like you don't just need to keep me from being eaten by tigers around the corner. You actually need to help me live my life while I'm here. But if we don't intentionally add those new variables, we will just be left to survival choices, essentially. So understanding that this is the way the brain operates, let's dive into how do we actually get in here and do something different, right? When the brain has a choice to make, what it wants to know is what the right choice is. really what it wants to know, and this is a huge distinction, is what's the wrong choice. See, most of us think that we want to be right. In reality, we don't want to be wrong. And that might seem like it's the same thing, but it is not the same thing. We are so much more afraid of being wrong than we are desiring being right. And that's one of the reasons why when we do make right decisions, we don't really hold on to them all that much. In fact, we might forget them immediately because our whole focus is not making wrong decisions. And so the brain just thinks, oh, this human is really interested in wrong decisions. So she's not even interested in remembering the right ones. Again, left to its own devices, the brain can universalize us to massive protection. But the problem with massive protection is it convinces us that the way to live a safe life is to take no action. The way to be sure that I'm not going to get killed by whatever danger might be lurking around the corner is to not move toward the corner. And then that causes us to be in a state of we can't do anything because taking action is the only way to produce a new risk that we're not currently managing right now. That's the key. And so most of us, because of everything I'm talking about, have a default pattern. Whenever we have a decision, the brain defaults to don't move. Nobody move, right? Nobody go anywhere. Let me assess all the risks. Let me assess all the danger. I'll come back to you and let you know if it's safe to move. So most of us have a default pattern of not taking action. But we all know, every single one of us knows, that the life you want to live is not where you currently are right now. The life you want to live requires the action that your brain has probably tried to convince you, if it hasn't fully convinced you, is scary. So that's essentially what we're dealing with here. And the brain's protection mechanism is unconscious. That's one of the reasons why our motivational willpower doesn't work long term, because we can get excited for a minute, for a few hours, maybe for a few days, if we're lucky for a few weeks. But the unconscious mind's desire to protect us from the dangers around the corner will win because it never shuts off. It'll just hang out and be like, all right, I know this motivation is going to wear off because it's never lasted in the past. So I got more patience than you do. I operate when you're asleep. So I'm just going to hang on here until your silly motivation runs its course, and then I'll take back over again. That's one of the reasons why we have this yo-yo relationship with our goals and our dreams and our diets and our relationships and anything else that we're kind of struggling with. It's because the unconscious mind knows it can wait you out. It can wait out whatever motivation you've got. All motivation will dissolve. All of it. Given enough time, all of it will dissolve, and the unconscious mind's desire to protect never gets shut off. It never has been shut off. It never will be shut off. That's why we got to understand these two forces. What's the force for us to take action, and what's the force for us to not take action? For almost all of us, the force to not take action is stronger. So here's what we got to do. We got to look at our choice point, all right? We got a choice. We can make that decision or we can make that decision. One of the big, huge misunderstandings is when we have two choices, we think we have two choices. And it's actually not two choices. If we can go to the right or we can go to the left, the third choice is stay right here. And that's the one that we're defaulted toward. Here's what the unconscious mind is demanding us to do or to know. The unconscious mind demands us to know if whenever we have more than one choice, let's say we have two choices, let's make this super simple. We got two choices. I can go down this path or that path. The unconscious mind says, I cannot afford to make a wrong decision again. Keyword, again. Keyword. Because once upon a time, none of us had a fear of making decisions. Not a single one of us had a fear of making decisions. This is a 100% constructed fear, primarily by adults. And kids that have this fear, they've been programmed by adults. This is a constructed fear. Nobody has a fear of making decisions until it's a potential repeat offense, until it's a potential wrong again, because that is what we're actually afraid of. We are less afraid of the consequences of the actual wrong decision, and we are more afraid of the consequences of us dealing with our own wrong decision again. This is about our relationship to self. So the brain sees two decisions, and the brain says, what's the outcome of this decision, and what's the outcome of this decision? You tell me what the outcome of both of those decisions will be, and then I will compare the outcome, and then I will allow you to take the right decision. In fact, more than that, I will make sure you don't take the wrong one again. So the brain is just chilling back, and he said, you give me that information about which one of these is righter than the other, and really which one of these is not the wrong one, and I'm all on board, and I will give you the permission that you've been lacking to make your decision. Go ahead, I'll wait. So our brain is demanding something that's impossible. The only way that you can know what is at the end of each of these choices is to choose this one, follow it all the way to the end, jump in your DeLorean time machine, come all the way back to the decision point, and then choose the other one as though you never chose that one, fully commit to this one, and then see what the outcome is to there. You know something I've never really thought about in this conversation until right now? You cannot know the outcome of a decision that you haven't committed to. You cannot know the outcome of a path that you haven't committed to. So if you have two paths and you take one step on one path and then another step on the other path, you might think that you've chosen both paths, and then you can compare both paths. The uncommitted path cannot produce what it has waiting for you. The path that you haven't fully committed to cannot tell you what's at the end of its path because you haven't fully committed. And you cannot fully commit while you're still in decision mode, while you're still trying to figure out which one of these paths is going to be the not wrong path. So that's one of the many, many reasons why we can't make a decision based on right or wrong. And what most of us are doing is we're looking into the past, and that's when we make our assessment of whether something is right or wrong. Here's hopefully a complete shift in the way that you think about decisions and the way that you think about yourself. Never in the history of humanity has a human made an intentionally wrong decision. Never in human history has a human made an intentionally wrong decision. Now, when I say that, I usually get some pushback. People go, oh no, I knew it was wrong to marry him. I knew it was wrong to marry her. I knew it was wrong to go to that party. I knew it was wrong to go to that school. I knew it was wrong to not get my certification. But in the moment of choice, every human makes its choice with hope. Even if there are red flags, there's a piece of you that hopes this time might be different. That's why you might get into a relationship that is presenting itself similarly to a bad relationship in the past, but there's a piece of you that says, but maybe this time it could be different. Every decision we ever make has hope inside of it until we make the decision, and then maybe that hope is taken away because reality hits. And now without the hope, then we just go look at all the red flags that we didn't pay attention to. And then we look back at ourselves. Literally, we're looking back at ourselves in the past and demanding that we should have seen the stuff that was unseeable when we made the choice. That's what we're doing. We're demanding that you should have known what was unknowable to you back there. Shame on you for not knowing what you couldn't have known. And you better not ever make that mistake again. That's the relationship that so many of us have with our past decisions. So how fair is it for us to make a choice now and not know whether this choice is going to be right or wrong until sometime in the future? You guys, our brains and our souls actually do want to make these choices. They're not afraid of the outcomes of the choices. They're afraid of being chastised and punished again for making the wrong decision, but they don't know how to make a decision because the choice of whether it's right or wrong isn't knowable right now. It's like we're saying, you better make the right decision, but I'm going to reserve judgment around whether it's a right or wrong decision until sometime in the future. And chances are, if this is the position I'm taking, you can guarantee that I'll be telling you it was the wrong decision. So we're just holding ourselves in contempt for all the bad choices that we made in the past, and then expecting us in that kind of pressure, that kind of emotional threat environment to make the right choice. Here's how you release yourself from that. The right choice is the one you make. I'm going to say that again because usually the solutions are simple, but because they're so simple, they get dismissed. Do not dismiss the simplicity of this solution. The right choice is the one you make. The wrong choice is the one you don't make. Now, if you make a choice today and it doesn't turn out the way you wanted it, here's the key. That doesn't make today's choice wrong. It just means that the rightness of today's choice was temporary. As soon as this choice is no longer leading you where you want to go, make a new choice. Here's one of the biggest liberating concepts that you could probably ever hold on to. I can't tell you how many people have said this right here, the words that I'm about to say, changed everything in their entire life. Again, it's simple. Don't dismiss it. It's simple. This is the answer. Whenever you get new information, you are allowed to make a new choice. It's simple. If you get new information, that new information is actually not evidence that that decision was wrong, because back there, that decision didn't know about this new information. So if you get into a relationship today and a year from now, you find something else out about that person, either something that you couldn't know here or, and something that the only way you could find out was to be in relationship for a year, that doesn't make your choice bad. It means you made the right choice and you learned some lesson, and that relationship had a package for you. That relationship had something for you to learn, either about yourself or about them, that you couldn't learn without being committed on that path. So you have to release yourself from the future assessment of right and wrong. And then the other thing is, you have to detach yourself from your decisions. If the decision doesn't turn out the way you wanted it to, that doesn't mean you're stupid. But because people think that's what it means, then they're afraid to take action. If it didn't work out the way I wanted it to means I'm stupid, well, then now you're just going to have your little inner child be terrified of being called stupid again by you if it doesn't work out. So you've got to release yourself from all the pressure. And here's what I also know. Increased pressure to make a right decision, when right will be determined with future information that you don't know, increasing the pressure to make the right decision in a moment of impossibility actually doesn't increase your ability to predict the future. If anything, it denies you of your awareness to see all the evidence that's around you right now. The increase of the pressure based on the fear of doing it wrong causes you to be restricted in your awareness. If you're desperate to not make a wrong decision again, that will destroy your ability to discern all the variables and all the information that will actually increase your ability to see what probably the best decision to make for now is. And behind so much of our sabotage is the fear of making the wrong decision, because we're afraid of getting beaten up by ourselves for being stupid again. That's everything. So release yourself from that. I'd say about 16 years ago, I was in a mastermind group, and this mastermind group had about 5 or 6 adults, 5 or 6 people right around the same age, between 30, 35, so. And we were all speakers and trainers, and we were talking about how difficult business was. We were talking about, I don't know if I should do social media. I don't know if I should do this and that. Actually, this is before social media. I don't know if I should do paid ads on Google, or if I should do this or that. And so we were all just kind of commiserating around the challenge that we were having, the challenges that we were collectively having around making these decisions. So there's like 5 or 6 of us commiserating around how hard it is to know what to do. And then we had one kid. He was an adult technically, but to us, he was this little kid, right? He was like 22 years old or so. And as we were just talking about how hard it is, he goes, hey, Hey guys, so what I do is whenever I have a decision and I have a bunch of different options, see, what I do is I pick one. And our immediate response was like, child, the adults are talking here. You don't just pick one. And we all just kind of collectively started to rise up, right? Like, get away from here. And then I would say in maybe 4 or 5 seconds, we recognized the brilliance. And we just went. Because at first in my mind, I was like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. That's the first thought in my mind. Oh, just pick one? Haven't you heard of all the challenges that we're having here, man? Oh, just pick one. Damn. Just pick one. Because here's what I've learned. Picking one is better than not picking one. And even if that particular decision that you have to make doesn't lead you where you want to go, remember, you can always re-choose, but the bigger problem here is the pattern of indecision, not the individual decisions themselves. It's the pattern of indecision that will paralyze you in your life. And then it shows up in crazy areas where it's not significant at all. Have any of you ever been looking at a menu, like not really knowing which meal to pick? I kind of want fish, but man, that salad looks good, but I heard the tater tots are really good. In that moment, your brain is saying, you better not pick the wrong food to eat again. Stupid. This pattern works its way into the decisions that literally are meaningless in our lives in the grand scheme of things, but our brain is so afraid of getting beaten up for the wrong decision. It doesn't know how to discern what decisions are significant or not. It's just afraid of the concept called make a decision. And one thing I know is that nobody has ever indecisively achieved their goals or dreams. Make a choice. Whichever one you make is the right one, according to all the resources that you have at the time. Whenever you get new information, allow yourself to make a different choice. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not weakness. That's actually wisdom. And that's not lack of commitment. That's actually more commitment to the thing that you're re-deciding about. And a decision that doesn't turn out well doesn't make the decider stupid. It doesn't make the decider dumb. Celebrate the decider, you, making decisions. Don't punish the decider for the wrongness of decisions that were impossible to know at the point the decision was made. At the beginning of the video, I asked you to think of a decision in a certain area of your life, and I asked you to tell me how long you've been sitting on that decision. My invitation to you is make a choice. Now, if we're talking about big, giant life choices, we're talking about marriages, we're talking about careers where you might quit one thing but not know what's happening in another thing. The bigger the life decision is, I don't want you to make a rash decision in totality, but I want you to do something committed toward that decision. It could be a conversation that you need to have with somebody. It could be going off on a vacation, maybe not now with the pandemic, but it could be, going off on an isolated vacation for 3 days. It's got to be something toward decision. You got to get yourself in action. Otherwise, you'll just stay stuck in the self-abuse room trying to make the right choice based on not being wrong.
All right. If you like this video, then check out that video where I dive deep into some of the best questions to ask when coaching your clients. You don't need great answers. What you need is great questions.